The morning Bridget walked into her own bakery for the first time as the owner, she thought about the $190 she'd had in her wallet the night she left. Not the divorce, not the years she'd lost, not even the things he'd said to her in that last tough fight, the ones she still sometimes heard when the oven was quiet and the street outside was dark. Just the $190. The way she'd counted it 3 times, standing in the parking lot of a motel off Route 9, Lily asleep in the back seat with her mouth open and one shoe missing. That was 14 months ago. Now she unlocked the front door of Sweetgrounds with a key that had her name on the lease behind it, and she breathed in the smell of flour and brown butter and thought, I made this. She hadn't always been someone who made things. For a long time, Bridget had been someone who maintained. She maintained the house on Caldwell Drive. She maintained the schedule, Lily's school pickups, her husband Rowan's dinner preferences, the calendar of his work events she attended in heels while he shook hands and forgot to introduce her. She maintained the version of herself that Rowan seemed to need, quiet, agreeable, fading a little at the edges so he could be the bright center of every room. They met when she was 24 and working the front counter at a cafe in Columbus. Rowan came in every morning for 18 days before he finally asked her out. She thought it was romantic. Later, she would understand that it was more about patience than romance. The kind of patience a person has when they've already decided they're going to get what they want. He was 7 years older, had a good job in commercial real estate, and knew exactly what kind of life he was offering. You won't have to work, he told her, somewhere around month 3. I want to take care of you. I want you to be able to be home. Be present. She heard love in those words. It took her years to hear what was also underneath them. They got married 2 years later. Lily was born the year after that. Bridget gave up the cafe job without much grief. She told herself she'd always been more of a home baker anyway, the kind of person who stress-tested brioche recipes on Sunday afternoons and brought lemon bars to every neighborhood gathering. She told herself that was enough. That contentment was something you chose, not something that happened to you. For a while, she even believed it. The first time she mentioned going back to work, Lily was 3. Bridget had found a part-time position at a little patisserie in Westerville, just 20 hours a week, mornings, while Lily was in preschool. She'd been excited. She'd printed out the job listing and left it on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker where Rowan would see it. He came home that evening and glanced at it the way he glanced at most things she did. Briefly. Sideways. You want to work in a bakery, he said. I thought it might be fun. I'd be home by noon every day. Bridget. He said her name like it was its own complete sentence. We don't need the money. I know. That's not why I want to. Do you know what people are going to think? That I can't provide for my family? She looked at him. No one's going to think that. You don't know that. He poured himself a glass of water and stood at the sink with his back to her. I work 60 hours a week so you don't have to do this. That's the whole point. That's what I signed up for. Bridget didn't take the job. She didn't bring it up again for 2 more years. By the time Lily was 5, Bridget had learned to read Rowan's moods the way you learn to read weather. By pressure, by the way the air changed, by small signs most people wouldn't notice. She knew which evenings to stay quiet and which ones she could push gently on things that mattered. She knew that Tuesday nights after his poker group he was usually loose and good-humored, and that Sunday mornings before noon were when he was his worst, tense, restless, looking for friction without knowing he was looking. She also knew by then that the money wasn't really hers. She had a joint account. She could spend on groceries, on household things, on Lily's activities. But larger purchases, a new laptop when hers died, a weekend trip she wanted to take with her college friend Priya. She had to ask. She had to explain. Sometimes he said yes. Sometimes he said let me think about it, which meant no. Sometimes he just said nothing and waited for her to drop it. She started hiding small amounts, 20s from the grocery budget when she came in under. Cash birthday gifts from her mother that she never mentioned. It felt shameful and it felt necessary, and she didn't know what to do with both of those feelings existing at the same time. The second time she brought up working, Rowan said something she never forgot. I need you here, he said. Lily needs you here. If you go get some little job somewhere, you're telling both of us that your personal ambitions are more important than this family. Is that what you're saying? She said no. She said she wasn't saying that at all. She made dinner and helped Lily with her bath and read her 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web, and then lay in the dark next to Rowan and stared at the ceiling and tried very hard not to cry. The unraveling when it came was not dramatic. It never is, really. It's a collection of small moments that you only understand as a sequence when you look back at them from far enough away. A weekend Rowan spent working in a hotel 40 minutes from home, A hotel she looked up later and found wasn't near any of his client sites. A charge on the shared credit card statement from a restaurant she'd never heard of. On a Thursday night when he'd said he was working late, the way he started keeping his phone screen down on the counter, the way he stopped asking about her day, she noticed. She filed things away. She didn't let herself name what she was filing. And then, in March, she overheard a phone call. She'd come home early from a grocery run. Lily had left her jacket in the car and it was cold, so Bridget had come back to get it. She walked in through the garage door the way she always did and heard Rowan's voice in the kitchen, low and unhurried, the voice he used when he thought he was alone. "She has no idea," he was saying. "She's not going anywhere. She can't. She doesn't have any money of her own. She hasn't worked in 6 years. She wouldn't even know where to start. I'll deal with it eventually." Bridget stood in the hallway with her keys in her hand and Lily's pink jacket, and listened to her husband describe her like a calculation, like a thing that could be managed on a timeline, like something he'd deal with eventually. She did not make a sound. She went back to the garage. She sat in her car for 11 minutes. Then she went back into the grocery store and bought the things on her list and came home and put them away and started dinner and didn't say a word. But something had shifted, quietly and permanently, in the place where she used to keep hope. She spent the next 6 weeks preparing. She called an attorney, a woman named Sasha who practiced family law out of a small office in Dublin, Ohio, and who spoke to Bridget without condescension about assets, about documentation, about what she should gather before she made any move. Bridget paid for those consultations in cash, from the small savings she'd built up in a second account she'd opened at a different bank, months earlier, on an instinct she hadn't fully understood at the time. She photographed financial documents. She made copies of the joint tax returns. She recorded one conversation, just one, when Rowan told her that everything in the house was in his name, that she had no claim to anything, that she should be careful about the choices she made going forward. She wasn't sure if she'd ever use it. She kept it anyway. She also quietly reached out about a commercial kitchen space she'd seen listed online. A small storefront on Maple in a neighborhood 2 towns over, a former sandwich shop, recently vacated, with a functional kitchen, good light in the front windows, and rent she'd calculated she could just barely cover for 3 months if she was careful. She called the number in the listing. She made an appointment to view it. She went alone, on a Tuesday while Lily was at school, and stood in that empty room with the smell of old bread and industrial cleaner and something underneath it. Something that felt like possibility. And she thought, yes. She signed the lease on a Friday. She filed for divorce the following Monday. Rowan did not deal with it eventually. She dealt with it first. She moved into her cousin Terry's spare room with Lily and a carload of their things. Terry was single, easygoing, the kind of person who made room without making you feel like a burden. She had a fold-out couch in her spare room that she'd made up with clean sheets and a good lamp on the nightstand. And when Bridget showed up at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday with a sleepy 7-year-old and a look on her face that said, "Don't ask," Terry just hugged her and said, "I made soup." That was in April. By May, Bridget had $190 left. The divorce proceedings were slower and more expensive than she'd hoped. Rowan had a better attorney. He also, it turned out, had more accounts than she'd known about and a talent for making assets difficult to find. She kept her attorney. She kept her documentation. She kept going. But money was genuinely, seriously, nearly gone. She and Lily shared a room at Terry's. Bridget drove a car with a busted rear window she'd taped plastic over. She bought Lily's school supplies at the dollar store and felt the particular shame of standing in that aisle, calculating, and then let the shame go because she didn't have the energy for it. Shame was a luxury. She needed the energy for other things. The bakery, she'd decided to call it Sweet Grounds, for the coffee she planned to serve alongside her pastries, and for the idea of starting from the ground and building up, was still just a space. She had the lease. She had a used display case she'd found on Facebook Marketplace. She had her own equipment, stand mixer, bench scraper, proofing baskets, the good knives she'd managed to pack. She had Terry, who had a day job but showed up on weekends to help Bridget scrub and paint and rearrange. She had no staff, no signage, no real opening plan. She had $190 and a lease and a very clear picture in her mind of the exact morning she wanted to create. Light in the window, a glass case full of croissants and kungaman, and the olive oil cake her mother used to make, the smell of coffee and something warm from the oven, and the particular quiet of a place that belongs to you. She opened Sweet Grounds on the first Saturday of June, 45 days after moving into Terry's spare room, with a folding chalkboard sign she'd lettered herself, and a soft launch she'd promoted only on local neighborhood apps and her own social media. She sold out by noon. The months that followed were the hardest and the strangest of her life, and later she would not be able to fully separate them in her memory because they blurred together the way hard things do, not into fog, but into a single sustained effort, a long note held. She woke at 4 every morning. She drove to the bakery in the dark. She mixed and shaped and baked, and she opened the doors at 7, and she ran the counter alone until she could afford to hire someone part-time, which took until August. She picked Lily up from school 3 days a week and brought her to the bakery where Lily did her homework at the small table in the back and occasionally, solemnly, taste-tested things and gave her verdict. "It needs more lemon," Lily said once, about the tart. "You think?" "Definitely more lemon." She added more lemon. The tart became the best seller. The divorce finalized in September. The settlement was not what she'd hoped, but it was something, a lump sum that let her pay back Terry for months of unpaid rent, clear some debt, and put a small safety net under the business. Rowan paid child support reliably, which she had not expected, and she tried not to feel too much about that one way or another. She hired a second person in October. She started doing weekend brunch service in November. By December, she had a wait list for her holiday pre-order boxes and had been featured in a small piece in the local lifestyle magazine, a paragraph and a photo. Her standing behind the counter in her apron, with the light coming in from the street. Terry cut it out and taped it to her fridge. Bridget had cried about a lot of things that year. She did not cry about the magazine photo. She framed it. It was a Thursday morning in late January when Rowan came back. Not came back. That wasn't the right phrase, and she knew even in the moment not to use it, not to give it that weight. He appeared. He showed up. He stood on the other side of the glass front door of Sweet Grounds at 9:42 in the morning and looked in. She saw him before he saw her. She was at the counter, ringing up a customer, and she glanced up at the sound of someone stopping outside. Not the purposeful stop of someone about to enter, but the uncertain stop of someone who's realized where they've ended up and isn't sure what to do about it. He was wearing the gray jacket she'd bought him 2 years ago. He looked thinner. He looked, she thought, like a man who had recently discovered something unpleasant about himself. She finished with the customer. She did not go to the door. He came in. The small bell above the door rang. She'd hung it herself on a cold October morning, Lily handing her the screwdriver from below. "Hey," Rowan said. She looked at him. "This is yours?" He made a small gesture that encompassed the room. The glass case, the chalkboard menu she updated every week, the wooden shelves she'd sourced from an estate sale and refinished herself, the framed local magazine photo above the register. "It is," she said. He stood there for a moment. She could see him cycling through things to say, testing and discarding them. "It's nice," he finally said. "Thank you. I saw the Instagram. You're doing really well." "I am." He looked at her. She looked back at him. She had expected to feel something larger than this. Anger, triumph, grief, the old desperate wish that he could see her. She had braced herself for it on the drives to work in the dark in the smalls hours when the oven was heating up. She had imagined this moment in different versions. She felt mostly calm, not cold, not performed, just settled, like a building that's been through enough weather to know what it can withstand. "I'm sorry," Rowan said. I know it doesn't fix anything. He stopped. "I wanted you to know I know." She nodded once, the way you nod when you receive information. "Is there anything you need?" he asked. She looked around her bakery. The morning light on the glass case, a couple at the corner table sharing a croissant, the distant sound of her employee Jonelle in the back, the smell of the second bake of the day just starting to come out of the oven. "No," she said. "I have everything I need." He left. The bell above the door rang again, and she watched him walk past the window, his gray jacket getting smaller, and she did not feel like she had won something. She felt, more accurately, like she had stopped playing a game she'd never actually agreed to. Like she had stepped off a board and found solid ground beneath her feet and was just standing there. Present. Real. She went back to the counter. A new customer came in. She smiled, genuinely, the way she'd been doing since June. "What can I get for you?" she said. Later that evening, she picked up Lily from her after-school program and they drove back to the apartment they now shared. Their own place, a 2-bedroom on the second floor of a building with a good landlord and a tree outside Lily's window that had been bare all winter and was just starting to bud. Lily talked the whole drive home about something that had happened at recess, a complicated social situation involving a misunderstanding and 2 best friends and a jump rope. And Bridget listened and asked questions at the right moments and drove through the early dark of a January evening with the heat on and her daughter's voice filling the car. She thought about Rowan standing in the bakery that morning. She thought about the $190. She thought about the parking lot of the motel off Route 9, Lily asleep with one shoe missing, and the feeling she'd had in that moment, not hopeless exactly, but stripped down, reduced. Everything that wasn't essential had been taken away, and what was left was her and her daughter, and whatever she could build with whatever she had. She had not known then that what she had was enough. She knew it now. "Mom," Lily said, shifting in her seat, "can we have breakfast for dinner?" Bridget smiled. "We can absolutely have breakfast for dinner. Can you make those eggs? The fancy ones? The ones with the herbs?" "Yeah, those. Sure, baby." She pulled into their parking spot, and Lily was out of the car before she'd even turned off the engine, running ahead to the door with her backpack bouncing, 7 years old and untouched, and certain that dinner would be good and her mom would follow right behind her. Bridget sat in the car for just a moment. She thought about what it had cost her. The years of quiet. The jobs she hadn't taken. The way she'd made herself small to fit into the space she was given. She didn't think about those years with anger anymore. Mostly she thought about them the way you think about a detour. The long way around that turned out to be the only way you were going to find the road you actually needed. She got out of the car. She locked it. She followed her daughter inside.